Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome you on this JRC4 Biodiversity, Forestry and Agroecology seminar held within UNIgreen, UNIgreen Alliance. We are today with Joaquim Silva from Polytechnic University of Coimbra from Portugal within our fourth seminar. And I had a pleasure of meeting Joaquim multiple times before. So it's a pleasure of having you, Joaquim, here today with us. I just wanted to tell everybody that this meeting will be recorded. It will be shared later on our YouTube channel of UNIgreen. And we'll start with a presentation of roughly half hour. Then we'll follow up with Q&A session. And we hope to finish everything in 45 minutes total. So if you have any questions, you can write them down on the tab that you have on the top of your screen, which is named Q&A. That we'll later have a look on. But as for now, I don't want to take too much time of your all precious time. So I'll give the floor to Joaquim. Joaquim, maybe you'll say more about your background first, and then we can proceed to the presentation.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joaquim from the Polytechnic University of Coimbra. I am a professor in fire ecology, and in the last, let's say, decade, I became interested also in invasive plants. So since we have a lot of invasive plants in Portugal and we have a lot of fire, that was a very promising field of research. So we have had some research project on this mixed field that is the fire ecology of invasive plants. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. It's about this very synergistic relationship between alien plants and flame produced by wildfires. Portugal is a fire-prone country. This map is already outdated because it goes only until 2020, but it is very representative of the current fire regime. So in 10 years, we had 1.2 million hectares burned, and to give you an idea of more recent figures, last year we had almost 300,000 hectares burned in one single year. So we have been trying to solve the problem, but not without much success. Contrarily to other countries in Europe that managed to reduce significantly the problem. As a result, our landscapes are profoundly transformed and changed because of this interplay between fire and invasive plants. So this photo here represents an area very close to Coimbra, where I'm living and teaching. So in the upper part, you see invasive eucalyptus, and in the down part, you see invasive acacias. So these are what we call the novel ecosystems that are produced by this synergistic relationship. How did we reach this situation? So there was a very dynamic evolution of forests in Portugal, with eucalypts being nowadays the first species in Portugal. Then we had pines, but this curve represents two species of pines. That's why it's still above the eucalypt curve. And also we have oak woodlands with an agroforestry system that we call Moderato. As to the native forest, it's very scarce, and it represents very little of the whole Portuguese estate of forests. Here I give you an example of acacias, which have an exponential expansion in Portugal. The scale here is not the same as this one, but the important thing is the very fast spread that acacias have in Portugal. So when did fire ecology meet invasion ecology? It was not too long ago. So the roots of ecology were established by Ernst Haeckel in the 19th century. At the time, nobody was talking still about fire ecology or invasion ecology. Invasion ecology was coined by Charles Alton in 1958, a British researcher. And in 1962, Edwin Komanek started a series of conferences in Tallahassee, Florida. And for the first time, the term fire ecology has appeared, and it has remained since then. This interplay between fire and invasive plants can be quite complex, with several consequences, like in the amount of seeds and biomass that are established after the invasion process starts. Then you may have consequences in the litter layer because it's completely changed in the soil biota and in the nutrients release. Like, for example, acacia, it's a nitrogen fixing oxygen, which promotes more acacia but prevents other species to establish. Likewise, the litter layer has allelopathic effects over the native plants. And finally, the amount of biomass and the shading that is produced by the alien plants, it's making it more difficult for the natives to thrive and to establish. So we may look at two different effects. So the effects of fire on the invasives and the effects of the invasive on fire. So as to the first effect, there is here an example of a research work that was performed by Spanish colleagues that was gathering, making tests with Robinia pseudacacia, Ailanthus altissima, and Acacia gialbata. Here you have the control. And then they were doing several experiments, submitting the seeds to different treatments, including heat and smoke. And these experiments serves to make clear that not all invasives are equally promoted by fire. Like here, the acacia is much more promoted by fire than, for example, Robinia pseudacacia. And in the case of Ailanthus, there is absolutely no effect. Look at the difference between the control and the other treatments. Another nasty invader that we have a lot in Portugal is Achaea. Achaea, it's now called Achaea decurrens, so this is not correct, this name that is here. I forgot to update the slide. But the Achaea, the plants, they have different mechanisms because they store seeds in the canopy, and these seeds are released when the fire comes. So fire is not promoting germination like in acacia, it's promoting the essence. So seeds are released from the fruits after fire passes. So these fruits are follicles that hold two winged seeds that can travel, according to this work from South African colleagues. They can travel up to 500 meters. Even for plants that do not show these syndromes like fire-promoted dehiscence or fire-promoted germination, in the case of species that are mostly spread by vegetative growth, like this Arundu donax, which is also an invader in Portugal. This work shows that even these species, they can benefit from fire because fire creates gaps in the vegetation, which then creates an opportunity for these resprouting species to establish through rhizomes and spread across the lands. So when we look at the effects on fire, it is much more difficult to test because you should test it at the landscape scale. You should test it with real fires, and all this it makes it very difficult to have an experimental setup that can prove the effects of the spreading of the species on the fire regime. But still, there are some works like this one from Paulo Fernandes from Portugal, which through simulations shows that acacia can promote a higher fire intensity and higher fire crowning. But there is a very recent development on this research because there is a paper that was submitted today that shows that it's not the same thing for all the different types of acacia woodlands. So, like for example, for adult trees, you have less fire spread, and for shrub-like trees, you have a higher fire intensity. But I'll come back to this later on. Yeah, and even for other species, it's not so straightforward to show or to prove that they are responsible for an aggravation of the fire regime. Like for example, this work from South African colleagues shows that acacia invasion did not promote more intense fires as compared to the natural fynbos. We in Portugal reached different results. Most of these results were given by these two projects, Aliens and Flames, which is the translation of Fogo and Invasores, and this Wild Gum project. This one was dedicated to investigate the eucalyptus relationships with fire, and this one we were dealing with acacia and with this nasty shrub that is acacia. So starting with acacia, some of the results that we got, we did several experiments where we were applying burning and slashing and a mix of slash and burn, and we were comparing it with a control. And the hypothesis was that we would, with the fire, deplete the seed bank and then prevent further germination. What the experiment showed is that there is, in fact, a depletion of the seed bank, but it is not sufficient. So still, we realized and we have measured that the seed bank is much deeper than what we thought. It goes deeper in the soil down to the humus layer, and not all seeds germinate. So one burn is not enough to deplete the seed bank. Then we were looking at acacia germination, doing these different treatments, and we realized that when we do slash and burn, and when we do burn, both treatments, they have a positive effect on acacia germination. So you see the situation before the experiment and what happened then 16 months later. Adding to the germination, we also had more resprouting. Then the other thing that we were investigating was the role of these plants on fire regime. One of the things that we realized is that different species have different, even at the little layer lower. Like here you see that acacia, the currents have a much higher fuel load than acacia, which helps understanding the result that we had further in this simulation that was done using the Behave software, which is the standard software for fire behavior. We realized that adult acacia stands, they had a very low effect on fire behavior. In this case, we were testing the flame length, even compared to our native forest ecosystems. In this case, pine forests and broadleaf forests. So it's not universal that species that are promoted by fire, they also promote fire. It's not so straightforward. On the contrary, we got different results with the acacia. We did some laboratory experiments where we were treating the follicles to different heat duration, and we realized that if we manage in the field to have a long residence time, we may have an inhibition of the essence, because with fires that are very slow, you may have a freezing of the essence mechanism of the follicles, which are woody fruits, and then they stay closed, so they don't release the seeds. Also, we were testing the number of viable seeds, and again, if we manage to have a long duration of heating in contact with the seeds and with the fruits, we also have the dying of most of the seeds. So even the follicles are not enough to insulate the heat from a long residence time. Acacia has also so all these plants are really nasty because they have different regeneration mechanisms, and even this acacia, which was long considered a pure cedar, a species that didn't resprout, we found that they resprout. They resprout only for small plants. If you have adult plants with a diameter higher than 4 centimeters, the resprout doesn't occur. But for young shrublands, we cut them and they do resprout, like you see here. We here tested the slash and burn treatment, which, contrarily to the acacia, it resulted very well. So with the slash and burn, you don't have any resprouting, and you have very little germination. So first you cut the plants and then you burn them, and apparently you may solve the problem. When we were doing measurements for the other fuel components of the acacia compared to native plants, we also found out that the acacia, they have they may accumulate a lot more fuel than our native plants. This is valid for live woody fuel and for dead fine fuel. Potentially can lead to much more intense fires, as we can see here in these fire simulations, which should suggest a much higher fire hazard for acacia stands. Higher for adult acacia, not so high for short acacia, but still higher than for our Atlantic or for our native shrublands. Finally, eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is the most widespread tree in the country. There were several works that were suggesting that eucalyptus was releasing the seeds after fire occurrence, and we were testing that within the frame of the wildland project. wild gum project by scorching some branches and comparing them to reference branches, control branches, which were not scorched. And what we got from these samples at all is that the number of capsules that released their seeds was much higher. So the number of released seeds, which was much higher, you see here the capsules, than with the control branches, which supports the hypothesis that fire is the strong promoting or promoter of seed released. This work was done in Australia. This is me close to a eucalypt plantation, and it was the first work that was that has statistically demonstrated that burned eucalyptus plantations, they have much more wildling regeneration than unburned plantations. Then across the years, we did many works dedicated to understand what are the mechanisms that favor the release of the establishment of new recruits, and the results that we got are similar to other invasive plants, like the vegetation cover, the less vegetation cover you have, like that one that is created by a fire, the more the plants establish. Eucalypts, they regenerate both because of the fire environment that is created after the fire passes, and for this because of this opening mechanism of the eucalypt capsules. Here we have our President of the Republic. He finished his mandate a couple of weeks ago. This was in 2018 after the very intense fires that we had in 2017, and the result was this, is that thousands of hectares of areas that didn't have eucalypts before, they became colonized with these millions of plants per hectare that were appearing after these 2017 fires. Some people said, well, the plants will all die, but we did some works, follow-up of this regeneration, and this was the result in 2021. So you don't have an eucalypt forest, you have an eucalypt shrubland, which is much worse than a forest, because then the fire spreads much easier. Eucalypts can spread their seeds at quite long distance, not so long as those species that have winged seeds or those species that are dispersed by animals. But still, we have reached more than 100 meters. Here I have 80, but afterwards we measured longer distances. And it might be just one individual, but it is enough to make a stepping stone to other invasion episode, and then the landscape goes progressively covered by wildlings of eucalypts. We even did some testing with adult trees, which are those that you see here. And these are the connections between the parents and the seedlings. So these 10 trees here, they colonized a whole hectare of new seedlings. In the ranking of the forest that burns the most, eucalyptus appears second in this rank, right after pine forests. And this shows that the species, due to its flammable compounds like cineol that is very abundant in the leaves, and also the dry environment that eucalyptus create, they favor fires in a very strong way. Another mechanism that eucalypts have is the spreading of the fire through spotting. because the leaves and the bark. So you see here in the photo that the tree accumulates a large amount of bark at the base of the trunk, like suggesting that I want to be burned, because if I'm burned, if fire comes, then I'm able to release my genes and perpetuate my succession. So while this is just an hypothesis, but is this very well adapted tree might well have evolved in order to promote fire. We have seen that if we use fire, we might be promoting more invasion, but we may need fire, like prescribed fire, as you see here, to prevent fires, for reducing fuel load and these things that are necessary for fire prevention. So when you do fuel management, you may opt according to three different alternatives. This is classic from this very old reference from Stephen Pine and other authors. And they established this principle that you can reduce the load or depth, you can isolate the fuels, or you can convert to another type of vegetation. So the first two approaches, they are very much popular, much more popular than the third one, because the third one, it implies a more higher investment, and it takes much more time to give results. So in many cases, fire agencies in many countries, they have adopted a policy of doing prescribed burning, like in this case in California. But the result is that they ended up with a landscape that is almost fully covered by non-natives, because these other species, they benefit from this fire. Also, fuel breaks. Other works have shown that the amount of invasive plants close to the fuel breaks, it's much higher than in areas that are more far apart, because fuel breaks, they create a disturbance, so they attract the invaders, and they create a better environment for invasion. So we are stuck. If we do fire prevention, we cannot do in many cases we are doing some nasty job in terms of preventing invaders. But what if we try to convert to another type of vegetation? Several works have shown that native vegetation, it's the best solution in order to prevent new invasive plants to come. This has been shown by several works. I give you here just an example of this work, which was done in Spain. Also, when you convert to native vegetation, especially if we are talking about invasive, about broadleaf species, it happens as this that you see in this photo, where this spot of native vegetation, it was the only vegetation, the only ecosystem that escaped the very intense fires of 2017, and it happened the same thing last year. So all this area has burned again in 2025, and again this area has escaped the fire. So this means a lot, and other works have shown this, like this work from Gonzalez. So it might be that you may have the best of two worlds. So if you try to convert, you are simultaneously preventing fires, and you are also preventing the invaders. The option that we have, so when you are at the beginning of the succession, is that this is good for fire prevention because you have very low fuel load, but it's very bad for invader prevention, because they love this type of environment. If you leave the succession to progress, then you create worse conditions for in terms of fire hazard, because you have a higher fuel load. But if you wait a little bit and if you introduce some management, you may end up with this type of system where you have the canopies quite high, and you have a discontinuity with the ground fuels. In many cases, you just have litter, which is very good for fire prevention, especially because this environment creates a humid and with a low temperature environment, and which is perfect to prevent the invaders, which you see here are very sad because they cannot penetrate. So either we continue this fuel reduction cycle, which we insist in Portugal and in many other countries, that this is the solution that we need to pursue because it gives quicker results, or we go through this path of ecological restoration. I obviously prefer this one because it's much more sustainable. So we are in the decade of ecosystem restoration that was promoted by the United Nations, and we also have an instrument which is the law for the restoration of nature that was established by the European Union. And these two instruments, they should provide a framework to do more for forest restoration. Let's see what the future tells us. But from my perspective, I would like that more Matas da Margaraça, the forest that resisted two intense wildfires, one in 2017 and one in 2025. This is a photo that was taken in 2021. But if you go there, the forest is still there because it's very resistant to fire. So I would like to see more forests like this to thrive and to expand across Portugal and across other European countries. Thank you very much, and I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you, Joaquim, for this really interesting presentation, especially the global perspective that you shared with us, showing us examples from different parts of the world. For all of our listeners, on the top of your screen, you have the Q&A section where you can ask questions. I will read them aloud. I don't see any yet, but I have two questions while we'll be waiting for more of them for our audience. So when you showed the comparison between acacia and acacia in the slash and burn comparison of the treatment, I was wondering, how about some kind of wildlife control? I mean, for example, wild boars are known to be eating a lot of seeds. So anybody wanted, or I don't know, anybody have checked this against the fire prevention and the spread of those alien species? I mean, how the behavior of wildlife is infecting this?
Well, I think that's a virgin area of research because I don't know of anyone that has done this type of works. What we have done, and it's, well, not really research, at least I don't know anything that is really scientific, but close to Coimbra, we have an area that is managed by the League for the Protection of Nature. And one of the photos was from that forest. It is a restored forest, but some areas are still being managed, and the manager uses goats to eat the acacia plants, and if it is small seedlings, the goats just love it. And the problem is that the goats are not that selective, so they don't distinguish a native plant from from an invasive. So they eat also the oaks and the acorns and all the native. So you have to be careful with that. In some cases, you need to protect the native plants in order for the goats not to damage them. But yeah, that could be just part of a solution. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, in the past, in our conditions in Poland, we had used some grazing as a a way of feeding the animals, but now it's not that common anymore. I haven't seen this. I mean, I rarely see this in the forest. But my question was connected because just before the meeting, we discussed that the local cuisine in Coimbra region is roast piglet, right? So I was thinking that maybe we can connect one and the other. But my second question, I encourage all the participants to ask questions through the Q&A section.
We have one already. We have one. Yeah.
Do we have one?
Yeah, we do. From Tony.
Yeah. So Tony asking, have you looked at whether seed bank recovery after fire is related to soil respiration recovery, particularly through changes in soil structure, organic matter, nutrient availability?
I know that some colleagues were dealing with that, but from the University of Coimbra and a colleague of mine from my school, the Marchante twins. They are twins, and they have done some work with acacia and with and also other people from their team at the University of Coimbra. But I cannot tell you exactly the results. In terms of soil structure, I don't think there is any change. Organic matter, normally what happens is that fire depletes the organic matter content depending on the depth of the heat, and nutrients are normally more available right after fire, but then in the medium term they tend to decline. So this is normally accompanied with the seed bank might be depleted, but soon after the acacias they recover, so they start releasing seeds again. So unless you are frequently managing the system, you will end up with more inputs of seeds across time.
Sure. Okay, thank you for this answer. I have one more question while we wait for any more comments. So I remember our discussion about eucalyptus forests, and how they grow, how they spread, and this coincides with the slide you showed us about the bark of eucalyptus that is just stored underneath. But I think that for most of our listeners, the ecology of this species, especially here in Central Europe, is not that well known. So maybe you can explain us, because eucalyptus has a very thin bark. So this strategy, is it killing the tree at the end, or it survives the fire? What's the story behind this?
Eucalyptus it's a super species because they can endure fire, and you're right to put this to make this remark, because the bark is quite thin, it's not thick, but what happens is that there are regenerating buds, dormant buds that are inside, very deep inside the bark, so they are not superficial. And they manage to resist to fire. So, and this is more true when you have adult plants. So when you see adult plants burned, they have epicornic regeneration all along the tree trunk. So they can, even if the canopy is completely burned, the tree still resists because of this epicornic resprouting that you have along the trunk. So it's there is one work where I have participated some years ago, where among 300 trees that were surveyed, only 4%, if I'm not wrong, were killed by fire. Okay. So it's very difficult to kill an eucalypt through fire. They are very fire resistant.
That's not good from the general perspective, because
you go ask to the pulp companies; they are very happy with that.
Yeah. That's connected with Michal's questions. So the question is, Joaquim, do you have in Portugal any connections between space planning and eucalyptus plantations? Any restrictions in terms of spatial planning of the whole thing and forest management planning on the other hand?
Yeah, we do have. It's something that is, well, relatively recent because it was implemented, I don't know, maybe 10 years or 9 years ago, that the government decided that the area of eucalypts in the country should not expand any further. I think we don't have yet the results of the last national forest inventory, but we should be very close to 1 million hectares of eucalypts in the country, which makes it 1/3 of the whole forest estate that we have in the country. So currently, you are not allowed to plant eucalyptus in an area that didn't have eucalyptus before. You are allowed to plant again if that area was previously occupied by eucalyptus. There are some exceptions, but if you plant in areas that didn't have eucalyptus before, then you have to compensate in areas that are converted from eucalyptus to something else in order to not to expand any further the area of eucalyptus in Portugal.
But it doesn't seem that it will go down, right? I mean, it just stays the same level. It's not going down at the end.
No, and besides, you also have this phenomenon of natural dispersal. So the law only applies to people that plant. It doesn't apply to the area that is invaded, right? So which we don't have an idea of how much area of eucalypts that we have in Portugal that have resulted from invasion. I had this goal of modeling eucalypt expansion at a country scale, but we didn't manage to finish this work, so we don't have any estimates yet.
Okay, and I think we have time for last question. A question from Marek Sławski. So the question is, do you think that combating invasive alien species in Portugal has a chance of success? If so, what time frame?
Yeah, well, we have to be optimistic. Okay, it's impossible to remove the invaders at a large scale. So they came to stay. That's a fact. But you can do something at a local scale, okay? And you can prevent them from spreading any further. It is a long time run. It takes a lot of time. You need programs for 1 decade, 2 decades in order to get visible results. If you are coming to Portugal, Wojciech, so one of the areas that I will show you is our campus forest, where we have been doing some nice work and with results in terms of removing the invaders. But we will only manage that by restoring the native forest, because the wrong way of doing things is to put your focus in the control. You have to put your focus in what you want to have next, okay? And then you remove the invaders, and then you have something next. If you just remove the invaders, they will return again and again and again, okay? So this is a matter of basic principle that it's universal, I think, to all countries and all species. You cannot rely only on the control. You have to have, especially I'm talking about terrestrial plants. You need to have plan, something to put in place. It doesn't have to be a native forest. It can be agriculture. It can be I don't know, something other thing. But you need to have something in place.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think we are running out of time. So I just wanted to show you 2 slides and we'll be finishing. So today it was the 4th seminar run by UNIgreen JRC4, Biodiversity, Forestry and Agroecology. So you had a chance to listen about aliens and flames by Joaquim Sande Silva from Polytechnic University of Coimbra in Portugal. And in next month, we are inviting you already to the presentation of Giulia Santunione, sorry for mispronouncing that, from Unimore in Italy, about climate-friendly parks as an urban practice, which will be held on the 31st of March on 2 p.m. Warsaw time. Here on Teams, I will be sending invitations for this presentation, hopefully this week, so you can all book this time in your calendar, but you can already save the date. So I hope to see you all that during that presentation. I hope that everybody enjoyed the presentation. I think that we can all thank Joaquim for his really nice talk. And it was a pleasure. And thank you everybody for joining us. See you during the next seminar and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and thank you, Wojciech. See you next time.
Yeah, bye.